Aliza Bin-Noun, the ambassador for Israel in France. Thank you so much for joining me on the program for
Thank,
Radio France International.
thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, I was thinking we should maybe begin. There's so much news to speak about, but perhaps the news of the day is, first of all, the 70th anniversary of the creation of Israel. What is the significance of this particular anniversary, and what is planned?
Well, it's an amazing date, of course. I mean, for me, I think it's Israel is the biggest miracle of the 20th century. The fact that within 70 years we managed to build up a country and to develop it in the way we did is really it's amazing. The actual celebrations took place already last month because we celebrate our Independence Day according to the Hebrew calendar. So today is really the proclamation, and there will be some events, but the big festivities took place a month ago, and really the whole country was joyful. Lots of activities and music events and dancing events and. Really, it was a day where everybody was united, everybody was proud, everybody was happy, no political disagreements, no political debates. Everybody was really, really on the same page, and it was wonderful.
So, how has the country changed over this time? It's evolved, as you said, it's grown so much. What still needs to be done?
Well, there is many things that still have to be done. First of all, we didn't achieve peace, which is, our biggest, really biggest interest and need in the Middle East. And throughout the years, there were lots of attempts and tours of negotiations, which unfortunately failed. But the Israelis, as Israelis and as really the only democratic country in the Middle East, we aspire for peace. For us, peace is a value. And we hope that one day we'll achieve it. So this is one thing. The second thing is to continue developing Israel, to continue developing the Israeli society, economy, education, like any other country, actually.
Mm. The other news of the day is the opening of the US Embassy in Jerusalem instead of Tel Aviv. Now, this decision by Donald Trump pleased Israel, I guess. It was welcomed very warmly.
It was very welcomed, and it is very much appreciated, because for us, Jerusalem has always been the capital. In the last 3,000 years, this was the place where the Jews were praying towards to, and for us, Israel is the capital, but it's not really recognized by most of the international community. And the U.S., by the way, they did vote for transferring the embassy about 20 years ago, but it was never actually done. And the fact that the U.S. President, Donald Trump, decided to take an action and actually to transfer the embassy to Jerusalem is really an historical event. He recognized in practical matters means the Israel is the capital, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And it's not only the US, by the way, because Guatemala is going to do that in 2 days, and Paraguay is also going to follow suit. So I think that this recognition is in the making, and we'll see more countries doing that in the near future.
Now, France's reaction to that was Jerusalem is the capital of both sides. How did Israel receive this statement, this position?
This is actually a position that we know. It's the traditional position of France with regard to Jerusalem. I mean, it was not a surprise. This is a position that is presented in each and every negotiation or high-ranking meetings and talks. But again, for us, Jerusalem is our capital. Jerusalem is our united city, and Jerusalem is there. So we will see how we go about it. Jerusalem has always been a very important subject on the table of negotiations. Unfortunately, our counterparts never agreed to come to a solution with regard to the whole, all the issues that are on the negotiation table. And the fact that now Jerusalem was recognized officially by the US as the capital of Israel is very, very important, because one used to think that we have to put Jerusalem to the end, to leave it to the end of the negotiations, to discuss all the other issues, and then we will come to Jerusalem because of the sensitivity of the issue. But no, I think, and this actually made all these negotiations fail. Now that we hopefully will start from a point where Jerusalem is recognized as the capital of Israel, I think it should make things easier in spite of of the perception of the international community on this regard.
Indeed, I wanted to ask you about the anger that's been expressed or the reluctance to accept this decision by the countries. How has that changed Israel's relationship in the world or its position in the world?
Well, actually it didn't, because if you took as an example, a recent example, our Eurovision Song Contest of 2 days ago, the fact that Israel won this competition, and it won because the European public voted for our extraordinary singer, shows that Israel is positioned in a very special way. Add to it the fact that Israel today is a key country in the field of innovation and science and technology. When you look at the reality, so many delegations go even from France to Israel to learn, to see what is this startup nation all about. How can it inspire the French and other countries? International companies, multinationals are opening research centers in Israel. And in the field of culture, Israeli culture is really very much appreciated everywhere in the world. This year, we're going to celebrate the cross seasons, which is Israel's year in France, and France's Israel in Israel, France's year in Israel. And in that framework, we have about 200 projects, wonderful programs, most of them in the field of culture, but also in the field of education, which will present Israel and France to the two populations. Here we're organizing an outstanding exhibition at the Grand Palais, which will open between the 6th and 8th June, and will show all the Israeli inventions and all the Israeli actually contributions to the well-being of the world. Not many people know, for instance, that Waze is actually an Israeli invention, and today millions of people are using this application. So this is just to say that Israel image, I think, today in the world is not only with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian relations. This is the case that existed, a few years back, but it's also in completely other fields. And even with regard to the political issues, the fact that the Middle East is changing, the fact that there is today a country that is threatening Israel, namely Iran, and not only Israel, but also the other Gulf countries, changed the dynamics of the Middle East. Today we share the same interests with countries that used to be very hostile in the past. So I think that the international community understands today the constraints that Israel has to deal with, the security problems that Israel is facing, and still Israel is the only democratic country which appreciates democratic values in the Middle East, and this country has to be really cherished, and its security has to be respected.
Now, coming back to these two decisions that the US made, the recognition of Israel as Jerusalem as Israel's capital and the decision to move the embassy, they've thrown into jeopardy, in a kind of a way, the peace talks around this subject of Jerusalem. And Palestinians have been protesting in recent weeks. There have been deaths. Israel has been criticized for using live fire. What is Israel's position on the peace process now? Is it dead? Can it be revived? I mean, with this violence going on now, this tension that's been building up with the Nakba commemoration tomorrow?
The tension has been there in the last 3 years. Before even President Trump decided to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the Palestinians decided to withdraw from negotiations. The last round took place a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. And instead of coming and sitting around the negotiation table and starting a dialogue, on all the issues that are known very well, Mahmoud Abbas decided to address to international organizations in order for them to put pressure on Israel, and in the same time he is very much involved with supporting terrorists, families of terrorists. He's giving them lots of money. The incitation against Israel in the Palestinian Authority, even in schools, school books, and their educational system goes on. And this is really much before the U.S. president recognized Jerusalem. So I think that we have to look at the whole picture in the whole picture, not only what is happening with regard to Jerusalem, this recognition of Jerusalem as the capital, but we have to look at the Middle East, what is happening today with regard to the strengthening of very extremist elements, and Mahmoud Abbas, who is not really He's not willing to come to the negotiation table and start a dialogue. Our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, invited him on several occasions to come to Jerusalem. He also said that he was ready to go to Ramallah or to choose any other capital where they can have their talks. But Mahmoud Abbas refuses. He refuses categorically. And in the same time, the messages that are diffused are very negative messages. Just to remind all of us that a few days ago, a week ago, he was accusing the Jews of being responsible for the Shoah. This is something that is completely absurd. It's unheard of, and the consequences and the influence that such declarations have on extremists in the Middle East, within the Palestinian Authority, in the Gaza Strip, are very, very negative. With regard to Gaza, the situation there is not a good economic situation. Israel is very much aware of it. Israel is trying to convince the international community to increase their donations in the economic infrastructure in order to improve the standard of living of the Palestinians. Unfortunately, the regime there, the Hamas regime, which is recognized by many countries in the world, including the EU, as a terror organizations, they are really allocating the finances to terrorist infrastructures. They are building tunnels which are supposed to carry weapons and terrorists into Israel in order to kill Israelis. And the incitation of the population to come to the barrier and to cross the barrier. And we all know that when they come there, it's not only just a protest or a demonstration. It's actually they come incited by their leaders, and if they could, they would actually cross that barrier, cross the border, and kill Israelis who live there on the border. So the Israeli government and the Israeli army, they have the responsibility to protect the Israelis who live there, and also further away. And it's very sad that the government, this terrorist entity, chose to pursue a path of war, of killings, of terrorism, instead of the other way around, and instead of choosing a path of peace and prosperity for their own population.
Mm-hmm. And finally, I wanted to come back to, France-Israel relations, but around the subject of the Iranian nuclear accord, which recently, again, the US made an announcement saying they would withdraw from this accord that was negotiated some years ago. France has said that they want to pursue the accord, and I know it's something that Israel has sought to get rid of. So has it introduced any tension between the relationship between Israel and France?
The relationships between Israel and France are very good relationships. We are really allies, and we have good discussions on all issues, including on this issue. We have good economic relations, we have good cultural relations, we have good civil society relations. With regard to the nuclear issue, the Israeli position has always been the same and very constant. We see the Iranian policy and the Iranian behavior in the Middle East. We see their expansion strategy. Today, they are getting stronger and stronger in Lebanon. They're bringing missiles which are aimed at Israel. They are launching drones. There was a drone launched some 2 months ago, an armed drone, which luckily was intercepted, but it was really a very serious act of aggression. We see the declarations that are coming out from Iran almost on a daily basis. They call for the destruction and annihilation of the state of Israel. It's the only country who menaces, who threatens the existence of another country. This is Iran. And them being involved in a nuclear program, which was revealed just a week ago when 100,000 of documents were brought from Iran to Israel, which showed clearly that they lied about their involvement in this nuclear program development. And in the same time, their aggression and their expansionism and their threats in the Middle East is something that Israel is opposing to. And this is why Israel's policy is as we know it. And we are discussing with our allies, all the issues that concern Iran and the threatening policy and strategy that Iran pursues against Israel and against other countries in the Middle East, namely the Gulf countries, which also share the same view and the same position as Israel.
And just quickly, first a question particularly about France. I wanted to know if you had a message for Israelis living in France or for French people in general with regards to Israel and its perception here in France. Do you have a message as the ambassador?
Well, we have very good, relations with the Jewish community. Just yesterday, I was invited by the community in Neuilly to celebrate Jerusalem Day. Yesterday was the day of the unification of Jerusalem, and this is a wonderful, warm community who supports Israel, who has family relatives in Israel, who are going to visit Israel. It's a very encouraging community. So my message to them is that we have to be united. We have to pursue the same goals. We are the same people, and we share the same interest. And I really, really want to thank them, and I do that, on every occasion, for their sincere and real support and their love for Israel.
Do you also have a message regarding the unfortunate situation that we've seen in recent years of the increase of anti-Semitic attacks? Have you a message also about this dark side of the news that we've been hearing?
The Israeli message, worldwide is that we all have to unite and to fight anti-Semitism. It's unbelievable that 70 years after the Shoah, after the mass destruction of the European Jewry, that we still face acts of anti-Semitism, that we still have a Holocaust survivor who was murdered just 3 months ago. This is something that is unbelievable, unheard of. We appreciate very much the cooperation we have with the French government and their involvement and their commitment to fight anti-Semitism. And this is something that, it has to be really very much emphasized in school, in the education system. Education plays a very important role in that regard. It has to be really strengthened so that we don't see this developing and we don't see any more victims.
Thank you very much for joining us on the RFI English program.
Thank you.
Aliza Bin-Noun, Ambassador for Israel in France.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.